Welcome to our morning verse by verse Bible study. Today is the 27th of August, Wednesday, and we're going to carry on from verse 53 of the 14th chapter of Mark. Now, in the earlier session on Monday, we spoke about, discussed in detail about the arrest of Jesus and how in the Garden of Gethsemane, Judas brought the Roman soldiers and the crowds and the people all together with clubs and swords to arrest him. And he knew that normally Jesus would meet the disciples in the Garden of Gethsemane. When he was alone, he would talk with God, the Father, on the Mount of Olives, on top of the Mount of Olives. But whereas the group of disciples he used to meet at the Garden of Gethsemane. And after he got arrested, the disciples are scattered completely. Judas betrayed him. The people scattered. The disciples scattered everywhere. There was one man, young man, who had a linen dress, and when Jesus got arrested, he left everything. He ran away naked from there. And then they all deserted him. And then he is brought before the authorities. Now, from 50th verse of Mark 14, we're going to focus on what happened when he's brought before the Jews, the chief priest, the high priest, the teachers of the law, and all the Jews. Before they go to Roman soldiers, not Roman soldiers, to Roman governor Pilate, they first have to try him based on the Jewish law. So they go before the priest. So let's carry on from verse 43. Mark 14, chapter 43, 53 says, not 40, 53. They took Jesus to the high priest, and all the chief priests, elders, and teachers of the law came together. Who the chief priest at that point of time? It was Caiaphas. Caiaphas was actually the same person who earlier prophesied. Although he was instrumental in Jesus being arrested, he prophesied. And he was a chief priest. And his father-in-law was Annas. And they took him first to Annas in John 18 chapter. By the way, both the arrest of Jesus and also the trial before the Jews and also before the Romans is recorded in all the four Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So we're going to take here and there things that are very exclusive to that particular Gospel and discuss. John 18 chapter 13, 14 talks about after he got arrested, they took him to Annas, the father-in-law of Caiaphas. Caiaphas was the chief priest. This is the same Caiaphas who earlier had prophesied about better one man die for a nation, the whole people perish. Let's look at John chapter 11, 49 to 53. Could you read that, please, Nick? John chapter 11, 49 to 53.
Yeah. John chapter 11, 49 to 53. Then one of them, named Caiaphas, who was high priest that year, spoke up. You know nothing at all. You do not realize that it is better for you that one man die for the people than that the whole nation perish. He did not say this on his own, but as high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus would die for the Jewish nation. And not only for that nation, but also for the scattered children of God, to bring them together and make them one. So from that day on, they plotted to take his life.
Already Caiaphas had prophesied. Caiaphas was instrumental in Jesus being arrested, and he's prophesying, which means God put his words in Caiaphas' mouth. He did not know what he was saying. As high priest, he prophesied. So here they bring Jesus, first of all, to his father-in-law, Annas, and then to Caiaphas to be tried by him. Already Caiaphas knows better one man die than the whole nation perish. He already had it in mind. And here they bring Jesus to him for the trial. There he sat with the guards and warmed himself at the fire. Okay, sorry, Peter. Verse 54. Peter followed him at a distance, right into the courtyard of the high priest. There he sat with the guards and warmed himself at the fire. It must have been winter. It's cold. And someone asked the question, why did Judas tell the people came to arrest Jesus? The one I kiss is the one is the Lord Jesus. Is the one to be. You have to arrest him and lead him away. Didn't they know Jesus? Point was it was dark, nighttime, dark, cold. They were all wearing warm clothing, so it was difficult to identify people. That's why Judas gave the sign, "Whom I kiss, he's the one." So here is Peter warming himself by the fire because it's cold there. Verse 55. The chief priest and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for evidence against Jesus so that they could put him to death, but they did not find any. Sanhedrin. Sanhedrin, as I earlier shared in other Bible studies, is a group of 71 people, a Jewish ruling council, the hierarchy, top hierarchy of Judaism. Why 71? The basis is number 11 chapter. At a point of time when the Jews were grumbling against God and against Moses about the miserable food they were getting, they were complaining about the food. No, there's no water here. In Egypt, we had garlic and melons, leeks, and onions and fish. Here, miserable food. We want meat. They're crying out, and Moses was so upset with them. In fact, he tells God, Lord, why are you treating me like this? I didn't ask for to read this. You brought me to read this people out of Egypt. Put me to death. Put me to death, he says. 11th chapter of Numbers, verse 15. The Lord tells Moses, choose 70 people, elders who are known to be very leaders in the congregation. Choose 70, I'll take my spirit upon you and pour upon them also. 70. 70 elders known to be leaders in the group, and I will take a spirit upon you and pour on them, and they'll help you manage all these people who are grumbling along the way. So 70 elders plus one more, 71. That's the basis for Sanhedrin. 71 elders who would judge cases concerning the Jews. So now they bring Jesus, first of all, to Annas, then high priest, Caiaphas, and now Sanhedrin, looking for some evidence against Jesus so that they could put him to death. But they did not find any. Many testified falsely against him, but their statements did not agree. Then, verse 57. Then some stood up and said, and gave this false testimony against him. We heard him say, I will restore this man made temple. Mark that word, man made. We heard him say, I will restore this man made temple, and in 3 days I will build up another, not made by man. Yet even then, their assessment did not agree. Did really Jesus say that? Did he really say that? Restore this man made temple, and I'll build one more. Another temple not made by man. Did he ever say that? What did he actually say? Let's go to John chapter 2, 18 to 20. John 2nd chapter, 18 to 20. Can you read that, Nick, please?
Yes. John chapter 2, 18 to 20. The Jews then responded to him, what sign can you show us to prove your authority to do all this? Jesus answered them, destroy this temple, and I will raise it again in 3 days. They replied, it has taken 46 years to build this temple, and you are going to raise it in 3 days?
Go ahead, further.
18 to 20. Okay.
Yeah.
The 21. Okay, give me a minute. 21 says, but the temple he had spoken of was his body. After he was raised from the dead, his disciples recalled what he had said. Then they believed the scripture and the words that Jesus had spoken.
Okay. He's talking about his body as a temple. He never said man-made temple. These people distort what he said. He said that I'll destroy this man-made temple, and after that I'll build another temple not made by man. He never said that. He said destroy this temple. He meant his body. They didn't understand at that point of time. Later on they understood. So distorted what he said and completely changed it so that they can find some excuse to arrest him. And even then it didn't agree. They could not find reasonable charges against him. Verse 60. Then the high priest stood up before them and asked Jesus, are you not going to answer? What is the testimony that these men are bringing against you? But Jesus remained silent and gave no answer. Why did he give no answer? To fulfill prophecy. Let's read Isaiah chapter 53, verse 7. Isaiah 53, verse 5 to 7. We look at verse 7 basically, but let's read 53rd chapter, verses 5 to 7.
Yeah. Isaiah 53, 5 to 7. But he was pierced for our transgression, he was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was on him, and by his wounds we are healed. We all, like sheep, have gone astray. Each of us has turned to our own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed and afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. He was led like a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before his shearers is silent, so he did not open his mouth.
That's why he didn't open his mouth. He kept silent. The lamb to the slaughter. He kept silent to fulfill prophecy because he knew exactly what was going to happen on the after arrested. And in fact, when in the Mount of Transfiguration, Moses and Elijah appeared to him and told him about what's going to happen. So he knew from Moses and Elijah. Also, he knew in his heart what's going to happen. He moved in step with the prophecy in the Bible, and therefore he did not ask for angels to come and rescue him, and he got arrested. Okay. Again, the high priest asked him, "Are you the Christ?" Christ in Greek, Messiah in Hebrew both mean the anointed one. Are you the Christ, anointed one? Are you the Christ, Son of the Blessed One? I am, said Jesus. A specific question he put to, are you the Messiah? He could not deny the truth. I am, said Jesus. And you see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One, coming on the clouds of heaven. I am, he says, I am the Messiah. I am the Blessed One. I am the Anointed One. They could not handle it. And he even says, you see another man coming at the right hand of the Mighty One, coming on the clouds of heaven. Talking about the second coming of Christ. Verse 63. High priest tore his clothes. What if we need any more witnesses? He asked. You heard the blasphemy. What do you think? You heard the blasphemy. The blasphemy was basically he is the Son of the Blessed One. He called, meaning he is Son of God, and he called God his Father. There are two reasons why they wanted to kill him. Actually, they're trying to find some fault, and there's no fault with him at all. In fact, once he asked the Jews, "Can you prove me guilty of sin? Can you prove me guilty of sin?" Nobody could prove him guilty of sin. They kept quiet, and but they found two reasons why they felt he had broken the law of Moses. One was he called God his Father. Other is he healed on Sabbath day. Let's read John chapter 5, verse 18. John 5:18.
Yes, John chapter 5, verse 18. For this reason they tried all the more to kill him. Not only was he breaking the Sabbath, but he was even calling God his own Father, making him equal with God.
Yeah. So when he says, I'm the Son of the Blessed One, the question was, are you Christ, Son of the Blessed One, Son of God? In other words, he says, yes, he had to tell the truth. And that what are we waiting for? This is blasphemy. He's calling God his own Father. And earlier he healed on the Sabbath day. These two reasons they used to arrest him. Now the point is, according to them, he had broken the Jewish law. And they brought him to Pilate later on. After they decided that they're going to kill him, before the Caiaphas and Caiaphas, the high priest, and Sanhedrin, they decided we're going to kill him. This is enough for us. Blasphemy. He says he's the Son of the Blessed One. He is Son of God. He is the Christ. How can we accept that? And they brought him to the authority. Now they're going to take him to Pilate because Romans, a Jew cannot pass sentence of death. A Jew, unless you're a Roman citizen, you can't pass the sentence of death. So they brought him to Pilate later on. We'll see. They brought him to Pilate. But before that, the second part of verse 64, they all condemn him as worthy of death because he says, I am the Christ, Son of the Blessed One. They asked him a direct question. He cannot deny the truth was he was Son of God, Son of the Blessed One. He can't deny it. He said, yes, I am. For that, they want to kill him. They all condemn him as worthy of death. Verse 65. Then some began to spit at him. They blindfolded him, struck him with their fists, and said, prophesy. And the guards took him and beat him. All because he says, I am the Christ, Son of the Blessed One. That's the truth. He spoke the truth. Verse 66. While Peter was below in the courtyard, one of the servants, girls of the high priest, came by. When she saw Peter warming himself, she looked closely at him. You also were with that Nazarene, Jesus, she said. But he denied it. I don't know or understand what you're talking about. This is why denying Jesus 3 times. God had prophesied before the rooster crows twice, deny me 3 times. The first time he denied. He's warming himself by the fire. A servant girl comes to him and looks closely at him. Looks closely at him. He also went with that Nazarene, Jesus. Now, why Nazarene? He's of Nazareth. He's from Nazareth. He grew up in Nazareth. So Nazarene. Nazarene, Jesus, she said. But he denied it. I don't know or understand what you're talking about, he said. Went out into the entryway. Okay. When the servant girl saw him there, she said again to those standing around, this fellow is one of them. Again denied it. After a little while, those standing near said to Peter, surely you're one of them, for you are a Galilean. You are a Galilean. He began to call down curse upon himself and he swore to them, I don't know this man you're talking about. He cursed himself. Why? I'll tell you why. The answer is found in the book of Matthew, 26 chapter, 73 and 74. Matthew 26 chapter, 73 and 74. Can you read that, please, Nick?
Yes. Matthew 26, 73 and 74 says, after a little while, those standing there went up to Peter and said, surely you are one of them. Your accent gives you away. Then he began to call down curses and he swore to them, I don't know the man. Immediately a rooster crowed.
Now, he's one of them. You're a Galilean. How do you know Galilean? From his accent. Galilee is northern part of Israel. Central part of Jerusalem. It's only about 120 kilometers. But the different dialect they spoke. So because he had a Galilean accent, he cursed himself. He cursed himself. Why am I having the accent? I wish I could speak like them. And they found out that he's a Galilean because of his accent. And he curses himself because of his accent. Now, it's very interesting to know God got a way of proving himself and justifying the truth and making sometimes Peter feel like a little embarrassed because now he's cursing himself because he's a Galilean accent. You find that particular accent became the strength for him later on. Second chapter of Acts we read, when they were all gathered together in Jerusalem, the anointing came upon them and they began to speak in tongues. And here this Galilean Peter is speaking in tongues. What tongue was it? Language the people who had come from different parts of the empire. For the feast of Passover and the feast of Tabernacles and the feast of Harvest, for 3 festivals, all Jews had to come to Jerusalem. Tabernacles had already been over. Then later on came the Passover when Christ was crucified. And 50 days later, 50th day after Passover, was the day of Pentecost, or the last day of the festival of the Feast of Harvest, 7 times 7, 49 days. Next day is the 50th day. They gathered together. Feast of Harvest. And there these people speak in tongues. And when the people came from Rome, from Arabia, from different parts of the empire, they heard them speaking their own language. Let's go to the second chapter of Acts, verse 5 to 7. 7 verse basically. Acts chapter 2.
Now they were staying in Jerusalem, God-fearing Jews from every nation under heaven. When they heard the sound, a crowd came together in bewilderment because each one heard their own language being spoken. Utterly amazed, they asked, aren't all these who are speaking Galileans?
How can they speak our language? That was the question. So while he was denied Christ 3 times, they found out because he's Galilean because of the accent, he's cursing himself. But now that Galilean accent became a strength because now they realized people who came from other parts of the empire, the Galileans, how come they speak our language? His weakness became a strength. And that's the beauty of our God. What we think is bad for us, he'll turn around for our good and vindicate us. So what a wonderful example of the Lord having the final word. Here Peter is cursing himself for the Galilean accent. Verse 71. He began to call down curse on himself and he swore, I don't know this man you're talking about. Verse 72. Immediately the rooster crowed the second time. Then Peter remembered the word Jesus had spoken to him. Before the rooster crows twice, you disown me 3 times. And he broke down and wept. He broke down and wept because he knew what he had done. And then he repented. But the beautiful thing is, even before he denied Jesus 3 times, God has spoken to him about the return. How wonderful our God is. He's spoken to him about the return. When he broke down and started crying, I am sure God reminded him of the fact that Jesus told him, he'll come back, return back. Only return back, he strengthened the brothers. Let's read Luke 22nd chapter, 31 and 32. Luke 22, 31, 32.
Luke 22, 31 and 32. Simon, Simon, Satan has asked to sift all of you as wheat, but I have prayed for you, Simon, that your faith may not fail. And when you have turned back, strengthen your brothers.
When you have turned back, strengthen your brothers. The Lord has spoken to him already about turning back. So now when he's weeping and feeling very bad for himself, I'm sure God reminded, don't worry, remember he told you you'll turn back? Not only you'll turn back, you'll strengthen the brothers. God knows the future. He knows exactly what's going to happen. So we go to intermediate failures and let on God. That's not the end. He'll draw us back. He draws us back. Sometimes we are faithless. He remains faithful. Our God is always faithful. 2 Timothy 2:13. Even though we are faithless, he remains faithful. For he cannot disown himself. So God has identified himself with us. If he ever denies us, if he were to be unfaithful towards us, it's like God saying, I am not God. So here we find before the late night, in fact, it happened, they had a Lord's Supper, then they went to the Garden of Gethsemane, then they got arrested, then they went before the priest, late night, and then after the priest decided that yes, he deserves death, he has to die, because he called himself Son of the Blessed One, Son of God. Then a question they put to him, are you the one? Yes, I am. That's enough. How can he say he's Son of God, Son of the Blessed One? Let them condemn him. They brought now to Pilate. Now they formed the Jewish hierarchy, chief priests, Pharisees, teachers of law, the Sanhedrin, 71 members, and they all decided he's worthy of death. Now they bring him to the Romans. Let's go on. Chapter 15, verse 1. Very early in the morning, the chief priests and with the elders, the teachers of the law, and the whole Sanhedrin reached a decision. They found Jesus, they bound Jesus, led him away, hand him over to Pilate. Now Pilate is they're given because they knew that the Romans have to kill him, or prophesied that he had to be crucified, not stoned. Actually, the punishment for breaking a Jewish law, a serious law of Jews, law of Moses, is actually stoning. It's the ultimate punishment. Corporate punishment for Jewish law is stoning. But Christ had to be crucified, not stoned, to fulfill prophecy. Isaiah 53:5. He has had to be pierced for our transgressions. Pierced for our transgressions. Also, he had to become a curse on the cross to redeem us from all curses. Deuteronomy 21:23. He had to hang on a tree, not stoned to death. By hanging on a tree, he became a curse to redeem us from all curses. So he had to be crucified. So they brought him to Pilate. They didn't know what they were doing. They were fulfilling prophecy, actually, by bringing him to Pilate for him to punish the Roman way, not the Jewish way. So let's go on. Pilate asked him a question. Are you the king of the Jews? Asked Pilate. Yes, it is as you say, Jesus replied. The chief priests accused him of many things. So again, Pilate asked him, aren't you going to answer? See how many things they are accusing you of. But Jesus still made no reply. And Pilate was amazed. Why did he not reply? Fulfill prophecy. He kept quiet. The lamb was slaughtered, he uttered not a word. I was amazed. Here they brought him for death, to condemn him to death. He's asking, I'm asking a question, he's not answering. He's amazed at his lack of reply. Let's go on. Verse 6. Now it was a custom at the feast to release a prisoner whom the people requested. A man called Barabbas was put in prison with the insurrectionists who committed murder in an uprising. The crowd came up and asked Pilate to do for them what he usually did. Do you want me to release to you the king of the Jews? Asked Pilate. Knowing it was out of envy, the chief priests had handed Jesus over to him. He knew already, see, Pilate being a king and a politician, he knew somehow they had discernment of people. It's not that he's not broken the law. They're envious of him because envy they brought him. Even he knew that. Look at that verse, very clearly it says. Verse 10, knowing it was out of envy, the chief priest had handed Jesus over to him. He said, do you want me to release him, king of the Jews? The chief priest stirred up the crowd to have Pilate release Barabbas instead. What should I do then with the one you call the king of the Jews? Asked them. Pilate asked them. Crucify him, they shouted. Why? What crime has he committed? Asked Pilate. Now Pilate knew that if he were to put him on the cross, he has to identify his sin, his breaking of the law. The Jew Roman custom was when a person is crucified, on the cross would be his name nailed to the cross along with the crime. What crime he had committed. He had broken Roman law. Jewish law is not important for him. That is the Jewish Judaism. He's concerned about Roman law. Has he broken Roman law? He had not broken any Roman law. What crime has he committed? He's done nothing against my law. So if I had put him on the cross, if I had to crucify him, I would have put the crime he committed. Why was that done by the Romans? Because along the highway they would have the crucifixions, people hanging on the cross. People walk along the highway. In the Rome, it was the Appian Way. In Jerusalem, it was the route from Egypt via the northern part of Jerusalem, via Capernaum, and then Megiddo, and towards Mesopotamia, highway. And all the people walk along the highway, look at the people on the cross, look at the name and the crime. If it was a man who committed murder, like Barabbas, murderer. So people look at that, they get deterrent for them. He's put on the cross because he murdered, so I should not murder anybody. Here's Pilate with a dilemma. If he had to put Christ on the cross, he had to write then a crime he had committed. He had nothing, couldn't find any fault with him. So he wanted to release him. But then these people said, crucify him. Let's look at that verse. But they heard all the more, all the louder, crucify him. Wanted to satisfy the crowd, Pilate released Barabbas to them. He had Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified. But there's one more reason. I will come back to later. I'll take maybe next week, next session, I'll do it in detail. One reason why he wanted to release him. His wife had a dream. Let's read Matthew 27 chapter, verse 19. Matthew 27 chapter, verse 19. Could you read that? And I'll carry on next week on Friday with the more detail as to why Pilate didn't want to arrest him and crucify him.
Matthew 27, verse 19. While Pilate was sitting on the judge seat, his wife sent him this message. Don't have anything to do with that innocent man, for I have suffered a great deal today in a dream because of him.
So the wife had told him, I had a dream, don't have to do them. Don't crucify him. Otherwise, he already knew he should not crucify him. Number one, no crime, no breaking the Roman law. And number two, his wife had told him, I had a dream. So Pilate in his heart wanted to release Jesus. One more thing he did. We read about that in the 23rd chapter of Luke. What he should do is read this passage and come on Friday. Luke 20th chapter, 4 to 20, 4th verse to 26th verse. Pilate sends Jesus to Herod. Herod is higher position than Pilate. Pilate is the governor, Herod is king. Here he wants to release Jesus. One is my wife told him, don't have to do with that man. Number two, had no reason to put him on the cross, not broken Roman law. He wanted King Herod's endorsement. If Herod says crucify him, he'll crucify him because he's answerable to King Herod. And he sends Jesus to King Herod, and you're going to see later on, Herod could not find any fault with him. And he sends him back to Pilate. Because he also couldn't find a fault with Jesus. So before you come on Friday, please read Luke 23rd chapter, verses 4 to 26. And he says a story about how Pilate sends Jesus to King Herod, and Herod sends him back. And by the way, Herod and Pilate could not get along. They didn't like each other. But because of Jesus, they became friends. Can you imagine? They became friends because of Jesus. That because they both trying to find fault with Jesus, they could not, and they became friends. But very interesting story as to how Pilate in his heart knew that this man should not be crucified. He had to put something on the cross, justify the crucifixion. No crime. So he sends him to Herod and comes back from Herod saying, I find no fault with him. And finally, we're going to see on Friday what made Pilate change his mind. What made Pilate change his mind? So for that, I want you to read John chapter 18, 19, John 19, 6 to 16. Especially verse 12. Especially verse 12. You think about it and come back on Friday, I'll explain to you. 19th chapter of John, 6 to 16, with a special reference to verse 12. What made Pilate change his mind? So we'll come back on Friday and study this aspect of his trial before Pilate. Trial before the Sanhedrin, we already read it. Now trial before Pilate, we're going to discuss in detail. So come back reading 20th chapter of Luke, verse 4 to 26, and John 19, 6 to 16, with special reference to verse 12. God bless you all.